Secretary and I did meet President-elect Trump just a few weeks ago for dinner for about a couple of hours, and we discussed.
Who are you with? Who are you with?
GB News in the UK.
Okay, good.
But would you rather Nigel Farage would have a bigger role?
Well, I think Nigel is great. I mean, I've known him for a long time. He had a great election, too. Picked up. But I actually think he's very nice. I think he ran a great race. He did very well.
I challenge Keir Starmer to explain how allowing record-breaking illegal crossings is protecting British jobs, economy, and values. Trump's words hung in the air as Starmer fumbled for a response. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video, but the real challenge is for you, the viewer. Can you watch this video without questioning everything you've been told about UK immigration? Can you face the uncomfortable truths that your leaders have been hiding? This isn't just about politics, it's about the future of Britain itself. Keir Starmer's confident assertion that "there's nothing I would do differently" regarding UK immigration control is a statement that's hard to swallow. It's as if he's parading around in invisible clothes.
A lot of seats, more seats than he was allowed to have, actually. They acknowledge that he won, but for some reason you have a very strange system over there.
Facing Keir Starmer, the UK Premier.
Yes, he's coming tonight.
What do you think of him? Some of his colleagues in government are quite critical of you.
Well, I'm going to see him in about an hour, so I have to be nice, right?
Discussed a number of issues of global significance. It was a very constructive exercise.
Expecting us all to admire his non-existent policy. But let's take a closer look at this emperor's new immigration strategy, shall we? While Starmer struts about, seemingly oblivious to the chaos unfolding around him, the reality on the ground tells a different story. The UK is grappling with record-breaking illegal crossings, yet Starmer appears content to maintain the status quo. It's a bit like watching a captain declare smooth sailing while the ship takes on water. The disconnect between Starmer's words and the harsh realities faced by British communities is stark. Take housing, for instance. Nigel Farage has highlighted a shocking statistic. 5 out of 7 new homes are being allocated to migrants. This leaves British families scrambling for the remaining scraps, struggling to find affordable housing in their own country. It's a situation that's causing frustration and resentment to simmer beneath the surface. But it's not just about bricks and mortar. Local communities are bearing the brunt of unchecked immigration in ways that go beyond housing shortages. Public services are stretched to breaking point, with schools, healthcare facilities, and social services struggling to cope with the increased demand. It's like trying to pour a gallon of water into a pint glass. Something's got to give. Experts are sounding the alarm, warning that if current immigration trends continue, the long-term impact on the UK's resources could be catastrophic. It's a ticking time bomb that Starmer seems content to ignore. But at what cost? The real price of his complacency isn't just measured in pounds and pence, but in the erosion of community cohesion and the British way of life. Critics argue that the Labour government is more focused on maintaining a politically correct image than on providing real solutions to this crisis. It's all style and no substance, a glossy veneer covering a crumbling foundation. Starmer's refusal to acknowledge the problem is tantamount to fiddling while Rome burns. The disconnect between Starmer's rhetoric and reality is becoming impossible to ignore. His emperor's new clothes are unraveling thread by thread, exposing the naked truth of Labour's immigration failings. But if Starmer won't acknowledge the problem, who will step up to point out that the emperor has no clothes? It seems we might need to look beyond the usual political circles for some uncomfortable truths. Enter Donald Trump and Nigel Farage, two figures who've never been afraid to ruffle feathers. While some might dismiss them as outsiders meddling in British affairs, Their critiques of UK immigration policy have struck a chord with many. Trump's challenge to Starmer: explain how this protects British jobs, economy, and values, cuts to the heart of the matter. It's a question that demands an answer, yet one that Starmer seems reluctant to provide. Why is it that these outsiders are the ones giving voice to concerns shared by many Britons? The answer might lie in the stifling atmosphere of political correctness that's descended upon the UK. It's become taboo to question immigration policies with those who do, risking accusations of xenophobia or racism. This climate of fear has created a vacuum, one that Trump and Farage have been all too happy to fill. Trump's own record on immigration in the US lends weight to his criticisms. His tough policies significantly reduced illegal crossings, a fact that raises uncomfortable questions about why Starmer hasn't adopted similar measures. Meanwhile, Farage positions himself as a champion of uncomfortable truths, arguing that the crisis goes beyond mere numbers. It's about preserving the UK's cultural identity and resources, issues that resonate deeply with many voters. The influence of Trump and Farage on public discourse can't be overstated. Their comments have ignited significant debate within the UK, with some mainstream politicians beginning to adopt similar rhetoric. It's a shift that suggests the political landscape regarding immigration discourse is changing, perhaps irrevocably. But how will Starmer respond to these pointed criticisms? So far, his strategy seems to be one of evasion and deflection. Yet, as Trump pointedly states, letting this continue is a choice, not an accident. It's a damning indictment of Starmer's leadership, one that's becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Public opinion appears to be shifting in favor of tougher immigration policies. Polling data indicates growing support for stricter measures, reflecting a change in sentiment among voters who feel current leadership is failing to address their concerns. It's a trend that Starmer ignores, at his peril. Farage's warning rings ominously true. The longer this crisis drags on, the harder it will be to fix. With the truth now out in the open, the question becomes, what happens next? Will Starmer continue to bury his head in the sand, or will he finally acknowledge the elephant in the room? The clock is ticking, and the British public is watching. As the dust settles, Starmer's immigration policy lies in tatters, exposed for the empty rhetoric it truly is. The emperor stands naked, his invisible clothes of political correctness and evasion torn away by the harsh winds of reality. Trump and Farage, love them or loathe them, have forced a conversation that many in Britain have been desperate to have. But it's not just about scoring political points. This is about the future of Britain itself. Nigel Farage's warning of a ticking time bomb of immigration isn't hyperbole. It's a stark reality that demands immediate attention. The strain on resources, from housing to healthcare, isn't some far-off problem. It's happening now in communities across the UK. So, what will it take for UK leaders to face this reality and act? Will it be the collapse of public services, the loss of national identity that Farage warns about? Or will it be the voices of the British people, finally raised in frustration, that force a change? One thing's certain: the comfortable silence around immigration is over. The question now is whether Britain's leaders will listen or continue to parade around in their emperor's new clothes, pretending everything's fine.